and get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting will now introduce themselves. And hi, I'm Allie Pesh. I live by Mint Springs. I'll go to you,
Hello,
Joe.
Ann Mount. I represent you on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you all.
Joe Four, the Highlands.
Brian Day, Emerald Ridge.
Michael Monaco over by Star Hill.
I'm Jenny Moore. I represent you on the Planning Commission.
Mark McKenney in Westall.
Sean Bird, St. George.
Costas Oberus, live out on 250.
Doug Bates, Whitehall.
Great. I think that's everybody for now. So we've also got Rachel Falkenstein from the county staff and Carolyn Schaefer, our clerk. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Crozet Community Advisory Committee. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. All right, so it's been a little while, but I think Joe, Valerie, sorry, losing track of whose job it is. Valerie sent minutes after the last meeting. Did anybody have any corrections, comments, motion to adopt the meeting minutes?
I move we adopt them as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Everyone in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are good. So we didn't have we didn't have a clear topic for tonight, and like I said in my email, I got several responses from you all about things that people would like to talk about, and with the master plan draft going before Anne and her colleagues next week, it seemed like a good time to talk about what we're gonna do after that. And so I think the only message that everybody got was from Matthew, and unfortunately he can't come tonight. So he did send me something, I guess, that I can read, but I'll start with everybody who is here. So if anyone wants to go first as far as thoughts for our upcoming agendas. We're going to have the transition in, I guess April will be Joe's first time taking over this hostess job I have. But we've got, the fall to sort of talk about things we have maybe not gotten a chance to since we've been hosting all the master plan discussions. So any thoughts? All right, Michael.
Yeah, beyond what Matthew sent. I'm
sorry. I just realized, Valerie, sorry to interrupt. We don't have anybody taking minutes right now because Valerie is not here. And so, Anne, you're going to take notes for me? Okay, I appreciate it. I actually would like notes since we're making a list. Okay, sorry to interrupt. All right, go ahead, Michael.
No, yeah, I'd like my thoughts recorded. No, yeah, I just wanted to second what Matthew sent in the email, that two big priorities, I think, are having a more Crozet specific presentation of data relating to racial equity and equity in general. And then, yeah, I like the idea of having a sort of primer on community engagement and our role and what we can do to be ambassadors as members of the advisory committee.
Cool. Yeah, glad to hear a second for those. Joe? Or anybody? It's small enough group. If people want to chime in, that's fine.
Yeah, I definitely think that the idea of kind of debriefing the master plan, like community engagement process, seems like a natural thing to do quickly, sort of, once the master plan goes through, hopefully the board of supervisors, and then more broadly about how that process went and how we can apply that in other projects going forward. More specifically, I've got a few specific things. One is the Acme property, the current status, and how, since that's so central to the employment district, I think it's important for us to have a good grasp of where that stands and where that looks to be going soon in the future. And then the other thing I have kind of more broadly is looking at the master plan, the implementation and the guiding principles. There are a number of projects, especially on the planning side, the ones that staff have identified as planning projects that we might be able to play a role. I'm wondering if the CCAC can actually play a kind of a substantive role in assisting with that, and maybe being a forum to do some of that. So for example, I'm looking at, in the probably the clearest one is the conservation section, or sorry, not conservation, in land use, right? So, we've got things like explore opportunities for community and rooftop solar projects. So is that example where we might serve as a forum for businesses, entities, developers who are interested in that? Say, what are the obstacles? Maybe people from the county, the climate action plan, saying what are the opportunities, what are the grants, what are the services that can incentivize rooftop solar, and where might it be implemented, like something like that. Or I look at it as something like goal 5A under land use, increase capacity of CCAC, local schools, or other community groups to initiate, implement, and manage placemaking projects. For example, thinking of something like murals or public art projects. Could we have a meeting with stakeholders from the arts community, from the schools, from building owners, and say, let's try to identify some potential places for public art, and really kind of serve as a hub for that. Two other kind of areas that I'm seeing here, I'm wondering if we could lend some assistance, not just on, and the other thing I guess I'm thinking more broadly is not just necessarily serving as like a public meeting, which we've done and we're well suited to do, gathering input and serving as a public meeting for staff. So I think we can do that, serve as a forum. The other thing I'm wondering is if we can actually, as a group and as individuals, take a little bit more active role in helping staff, knowing that y'all are overworked and very busy. And can we take some sort of active role in helping with some of the things? Like, for example, I like all the work with Sean and everybody that went into the survey, a few years ago. There are things here like the Downtown Neighborhoods Architectural and Cultural Resources Study. Is there a role for the CCAC or for people on here, or in helping to canvas? I don't know. Can we go door to door? Can we look at maps? Can we help gather data? If we talk to staff and say, what do you guys need? Can we provide some manpower for that? Or the naturally occurring affordable housing survey? Are there things that we could do as individuals or as committee to actually do some of the legwork there and take some of the burden off staff and move the ball forward? So that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at these implementation projects and these guiding principles and looking for the things where we might be able to actually take an active role. So serving, number one, serving as a forum, and number two, actually doing some of the work ourselves. And I've got a whole, I can come back and I can send a more specific email to like Rachel, and for the notes, I can include that because I kind of have a laundry list, but that's kind of my broader idea.
Good. Cool. Any quick feedback to Joe's points, or we can go on to Mark. Okay.
All right. So I was kind of interested on two things. One, capital improvement projects, both kind of spearheaded by the county, and also VDOT, because I know the kind of infrastructure topics continually get brought up with planning commission meetings and in here. So I would like to kind of see, and partially because I'm just coming on 6 months onto the advisory team here, what are the capital improvement projects for Crozet? What are the priorities? What are earmarked in county budgets? What's the timeline kind of look like? I'd like to see the same with VDOT from a road perspective, because I know, nothing in government moves as quick as people want. So road projects could take 5 years from start to finish. So I kind of like to, and I think it'd be beneficial for the community when folks join in these meetings to understand what is being planned and the time that it takes to get from start to finish. I didn't know, and Jeannie, maybe this is something you can answer. Is it worthwhile for us to kind of maybe have a discussion, with planning commission packets, zoning packets that come forth, especially some of the hot topic ones, such as the park recently, where we're able to kind of discuss at the CCAC level prior to a planning commission packet for feedback. So I don't know if that's a possibility either. Over.
Yes, we do usually discuss anything that's going before the planning commission has a public meeting that's usually at our meeting first. So, but it's just that project was deferred for a little while, so they'd already done it. It might have been before your time that they had presented to our group. Jenny, did you have
We had the community meeting for the park, and for other things we do that. And I think that it sometimes that does happen where there's a delay between when it gets to planning commission for various reasons, or in the park's case, they were in front of planning commission and deferred and came back, but there wasn't enough of a substance change to require them to meet again. But yeah, I think we do tend, historically we've had those topics in front of us. A lot of times it's pretty new, so a lot of questions come out, and sometimes staff can't answer because it's sort of the beginning part of the process. But then we can circle back and get answers as the process unfolds. And I think that's part of why originally we were hoping to do master planning and have separate meetings before, everything changed. So we'd still have our group available to host some of those. So now that we're not doing master planning at every meeting, we have time to have those applications come in front of us. And then the members can weigh in and ask questions.
Yeah, thank you again. That probably happened before I got on. So everything since I've been on is master plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, to follow up on Mark's point, we give the county an awful hard time about the fact that, and I think rightfully so, that the infrastructure hasn't kept up. On the other hand, the county's hands have been tied significantly by the legislature. And I think we need to talk to some of our elected representatives by having them come to a CCAC meeting so that they're on the public record, and talk to them about changing it back where local governments can help negotiate proffers, because those proffers could provide incentives, financial incentives for getting the projects done more quickly. And, it was that way not so many years ago, but all the local governments in Virginia have been handcuffed by a piece of legislation that just needs to be turned around. And, I think I suggested in one comment that it should be Cree deeds, but whoever might be willing to take this forward and say, look, if Virginia's not going to be backwards, it needs to be able to keep up the infrastructure to keep up with growth. And to do so, developers need to pay their fair share. Over.
Thanks, Brian. I'd love to get some feedback about that idea. If anybody, Sandy?
Sorry, I'm out of practice on the unmuting thing. I wonder if Anne would be a better person to specifically address that question because, you know, dealing with the legislature is a whole different game. I wanted to talk about something else.
Yeah, we can go back to you. What do you think, Anne?
I would just add a second part of the question. If we had legislators come, because the current push for the last several years has been about impact fees, which have a much more broad approach, can be used for by right as well as units which are in a zoning situation that we are limited with proffers to the things in rezoning. So for years and years, like decades, there's been an interest in having impact fees, which could be used for transportation or any number of things. So that's the second half of the important question that I would like to just make sure to add. There is currently and has been for the last 10 years, at least in the county's legislative program, work to this extent. And I'm a member of the High Growth Coalition, which has been focused 100% of its time on this in the legislature. And we generally get kicked down the stairs, but now and then there's some small progress. And 2 years ago, there was some small progress and got back some of the initiatives that we had locally. But proffers, if we're going to keep proffers, they need to be much more widely distributed amongst different uses, from libraries and parks and all sorts of things, as it used to be, not just something within a spitting distance of the project. So that's all I have to add at the moment. Thank you.
Would it be, and maybe Rachel could respond too, like, I mean, would it be within our purview and your opinion for us to have a legislator come and talk about these development specific laws with us? Any thoughts?
Were you addressing me or Rachel?
Well, either one of you.
I thought it was Rachel, so.
Yeah.
So my take is if it were information sharing, I don't see an issue with that. Want to shy away from making it a political campaign type of event.
Oh, for sure.
So, but yeah, if there were information sharing about the state legislation and you all kind of providing your thoughts, I don't see that being an issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to be like election season or anything like that, but just with somebody who already is in a role that we could, is that what you're thinking, Brian?
Yeah, I just think that as soon as we could talk and get some idea about, are there ways that we can push back so that local governments can get more resources to build infrastructure that we need.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? No, I can move on to Sandy.
Yeah, I apologize because I did join a few minutes late. And so stop me if you've already talked about this, but I am especially concerned about this middle density concept, which was brought to us by staff. It wasn't something that bubbled up from the community. Nobody in Crozet said, could we get more density here, please? And my sense is that perhaps staff is trying to keep the Plan Commission happy because the Plan Commission's hell-bent on getting us more affordable housing. I have a problem with the fact that we've never had a public hearing on this particular topic, nor has the Board of Supervisors ever voted on whether this is a great idea. And my concern is that if we get this master plan approved, that's part of it, and that could be an increasingly big part of it because it's a way to increase the number of units that we're allowing developers to build. But if you look at the track record, it doesn't seem to me that the county has been very good at assuring that whatever agreements they make with developers are followed through on. My understanding is that we've had 40 affordable units built and that 23 of them have been sold to an income qualified buyer, and that's it. I mean, if we're gonna say okay to more density, then we need to have some assurance that these units really are affordable and that people will end up owning them, because again, it's my understanding that there's no prohibition against somebody who qualifies buying a unit for the low price and then flipping it, for example. And if it sits on the market for 90 days, that it can revert to market value. I mean, I just don't think that we've come up with a good solution for providing affordable housing. What it seems to me this middle density does is to assure that we're going to have more density, but maybe not affordable housing. And I really would like to see some recognition that people who opted to live in Charlottesville did so because they're buying into what urban lifestyle entails. They want shopping centers nearby. They want all the amenities that a city provides them, and they're willing to have density in exchange. I think people who moved to Crozet didn't sign up for that. I think we signed up to be a suburb, and a suburb means more open space, more green space, less density. And so, you know, in a sense, this middle density concept is not appropriate for Crozet, and it may not be appropriate for other districts, which will soon be facing the same thing. I mean, after we're done with our master plan, other districts are going to have master plans, and the staff is again going to point to us and say, hey, let's do this middle density thing where we can have more units. And so I guess I'd like to have more public discussion before the board takes a vote on the master plan and decide whether this is really something that's appropriate to Crozet.
Maybe Anne, you can respond.
I think that the recommendation from the Planning Commission, as you may know, was the current draft with suggesting the removal of the Tabor block, that column on the page, but the rest, which was the original, the prior Tabor block draft, basically moved forward. And I think at this date, since it's a week from today, that would be the best way to go. I have raised the issue of the countywide discussion and debate about middle density several times, and I think it is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen before Wednesday. So I guess that's all I have on that one. But your points are well taken about what people have signed up to do. I think there are more and more neighborhoods where people understand that they live here now and they have some input and should have input about decisions. I mean, that's been my philosophy my whole life, is that the people who are here should be the ones who are deciding what their future is going to be. That is our jurisdictional requirement from the state.
Well, and the real
shepherd
fear
that.
is what guarantee does the county give us that you will be able to afford the infrastructure that will be required, or the services, the educational services and the other services that a more dense community will require. You know, so far the track record's pretty poor. Anne would probably disagree with me, but I'm still waiting for sidewalks. So
the Eastern Avenue Bridge was on the books in 1992, folks. I mean, I understand completely. And the whole Park and Tabor sidewalks and all these other many things. So everybody is completely correct about the fact that we have not kept up well enough at all anywhere, whether it's here or Ravenna or Rio or anywhere, with these, even a small project that ends up costing millions. So it is always a tug of war, because Fairfax people who live there may be able to afford, I guess they can, their $1.10 tax rate on their house that, you know, is 3 times the value of the house, the same house here. And I don't know where all those people work or what they do to somehow survive all of those expenses. But I do know that many residents in the Whitehall district would not be able to stay for 5 minutes if we took that kind of attitude, because there are certainly plenty of people who have the resources to absorb even a giant tax increase, but there are many, many more who absolutely cannot. And so it is a real tug of war for me, always.
Could I say one more thing just quickly? It's come to my attention because I've actually read the minutes from time to time that the minutes are not very detailed from these meetings. They will often say something like, the commission discussed X, Y, and Z without getting into opinions or issues or concerns. And so I gather this meeting's being recorded, Ally, is that right? Is there some way that we could get more detailed minutes going to the Board of Supervisors, or that, you know, you and I have talked about the possibility of you doing a one-pager for the board outlining what some of our concerns are.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, I just don't think people are, I mean, I'd like to think that the board cares what we think, but I'm not sure if they know what we think.
Right. I mean, all of the meetings are posted on the Albemarle County calendar after the fact and on the Albemarle County YouTube. I used to also post them on the Crozet Gazette, but I haven't been keeping up with that. But the, I mean, and also report, like, I mean, every agenda, you know, once a month, right? You guys share with each other what was, you know, a report from the CACs, right? And
there are reporting times. I tend to use it when the issue comes up rather than just a general report, which may not be absorbed right then and there. So I'm continually building the issues so that I can jump in at the right moment.
I mean, I'm not sure, like, I
discussion.
mean, if we took more detailed minutes, I mean, to me, it sounds just like a task. I mean, I feel like they would just go into the void. I mean, a one pager from the chair, I mean, that's sort of not part of our scope. I mean, I don't know if that would be okay by, you know, like all the FOIA rules. If I wrote something myself, I mean, the group would have to approve it, right? So
Maybe.
I don't know, you know, I don't know, rules wise, what would be acceptable if I was going to come up with some kind of summary of the meeting that we expected, you know, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to read.
What I've seen from recently from other master plan areas has been a lot of engagement of individuals who are on the committees, more than the committee doing a statement, but having 15 statements. They're not always the same, and that's okay. But the fact that these are the people who have really put in the time and done a whole lot of extra work and are taking now even more time to share their very detailed thoughts with the board before an important vote comes up.
I mean, I think that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, very
And
impactful.
the other way we've been doing it historically, and I mean, this is, you know, I've been on this committee for 5 years almost. And before that, I was a regular attendee for several years. So the committee can compose as a group a resolution, which we then do a roll call vote on, and then we submit the resolution to, you know, for their packets, and those get read. I mean, and I've even gone to the meeting as chair and read the resolution so that it's like on record and not overlooked in a packet. But as far as like monthly minutes, I mean, I personally don't think it's worth our volunteer hours in that way, but I'd listen to other ideas or thoughts.
And do you think that the board has heard us? Do you think that, well, first of all, have we made a statement as a group regarding middle density? Was there ever a vote taken where we said yes or no to this idea?
We did take votes, if you recall, and they were not well received by a couple people in the decision-making roles. Although it is definitely within our rules to take votes. I mean, within our right to take a vote as a group. But we did do that. we voted for about we voted by line item for the land use changes to the master plan draft. And so they saw that. I mean, and I went and made us think about it at the meeting. You know, a couple, we have some absent members here who didn't vote, you know, the vote split as one would expect it on many of those issues. I mean, if you don't, I'm pretty sure you were there. Mark and Michael weren't on the committee yet when we were doing that, but.
I think that the planning commission certainly heard and understood the concerns about the taper block and did get, I think unanimously, Jenny, is that right, behind the recommendation to take out that last minute change. So that is a huge positive from my perspective. And that was a lot of good information that came from community members.
I think specifically on the middle density issue, I think they heard us. I don't think that they agreed with us.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, did you have a response or you have a different topic? Joe and Mark and Jenny, anybody can chime in.
Yeah, I see Jenny had her hand up. Maybe she was responding.
Yeah, I just, I don't, if, you know, we want to move on, that's fine, but I wanted to add to the discussion just for us not to forget that if I remember correctly, when the vote was taken about middle density, since that vote from the group as a recommendation, that it was changed by staff. And so just to add that into the mix of what's happening here is that they pulled back the middle density and then put some parameters around it that really did speak to the affordable housing part. And so the commission, you know, did react to that change. I think initially we had the original version, and then as it's made its way through, it changed. So I just wanted to, I took that to mean that staff were hearing the concerns, and even though the ultimate outcome that they recommended wasn't what people wanted to see, it was something that I think was in response to concerns they heard from the community. And so they came back with something that was a little bit different.
And with many guardrails, which are very much appreciated.
Yeah, I think it ended up being a little bit of a compromise, obviously, and in the end, middle density is in the master plan. But I thought it was like, I appreciate Jenny. Yeah, exactly. Staff made changes before it even went to you guys based on our feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on this topic as far as how we are? We're getting a little bit off the topic of agenda planning, but more just like CCAC business and how we're engaging with the decision makers. Go ahead, Jenny.
I think just back to I don't really have any opinion on the minutes. I think we've had people take really detailed minutes in the past, and you know, we also have had pretty simple minutes, which I think is, you know, that suits the need for minutes. As Ali pointed out, if there's a specific topic, a request, a special use permit or rezoning, and we have a community meeting, there could be more information that's captured specific to that could come forward to CCAC or to the Planning Commission and the board. But I guess just to Sandy's comment, you know, it is really helpful to me as a planning commissioner if, you know, we get emails from people, we read all those emails. It's especially nice if we don't get them at 5 o'clock, you know, on the day of a meeting that we have at 6, but, you know, emails can go to staff ahead of time and get into packets. And then, you know, I mean, a lot of people email and say, identify themselves as members of the CCAC, even though they aren't speaking on behalf of the whole group. They, you know, have followed the process and can share with us, you know, thoughts and recommendations and suggestions, things they want to be lifted up when there's so many different things to talk about, like with master planning. but everyone, that's helpful. And I would encourage everyone to do that with the board as well. It's really nice to get that. You can email the entire planning commission one email. It goes to everyone to read. And then of course you're welcome to come speak, but really getting the emails ahead of time and be able to take the time to read through those is something that I would encourage everyone to do because it's very helpful.
Thank you. So several hands up, and I don't know if we're, Sandy, do you have more to say on this topic or is it a new topic?
I just wonder if the master plan is approved with this middle density for 240, which are, you know, big chunks of land as opposed to Tabor. What recourse does the community have if we don't want that much density out there once it's part of the master plan? Are we kind of stuck with it, or is there still the opportunity to say no?
Rachel will correct me if I leave something out, but neither of those properties has come forward, I don't think, for their rezoning yet. This is a range in the master plan. So there's the low range and the high range. And so there will be the community process at the planning commission and the board for the rezoning in order to allow anything higher than it is right now. And that would be a considerably useful way to make sure that everybody understands those for the individual properties, whether it's Whitegate or the other one.
Yeah, because with the master plan, we are creating the category of middle density, but nothing is being rezoned with this document. So anything, it's a land use designation, but the property owner would still have to apply for it and then be given approval.
Yeah, and then if somebody steps up and says, but it's in the master plan this way, how much weight does that have?
It has some weight, which is the whole point, but it's not the decision. Because it's going to be site specific and there will be the whole public process for each application. I agree. I mean, I was very outspoken against it. I mean, but I'm also like, we've worked really hard, and overall there were a lot of compromises. And I mean, I don't want that kind of density on Whitegate or Old Dominion, but you know, I'm working as as part of a big community, and that's where it fell, this, you know, and it's a little bit late now, as the vote is next week, to expect that to change. I mean, I mean, hopefully, I hope that it's approved unanimously next week by the board, and we go from there. Joe, I don't know if you were next or Mark, but I think.
Mark can go ahead. I'm making just a couple of notes. Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Sandra said something that kind of sparked something in my mind on the first topic on capital improvement projects. So is there a way, and I know the county staff's resources are stretched thin, is there a way that we could look back, because many of us moved in probably post 2010 based on statistics. Is there a way we could look back at the past Crozet master plans and see what was actually achieved from capital improvement projects that were identified, you know, kind of measures of effectiveness? You know, did these things achieve? Did they work? And maybe this is a little too late in the game. I'm just also thinking out loud here, because I'd be really interested to see what was laid out in past master plans over the last 2 decades, and where did some things maybe veer off that were supposed to be done, whether it was affordable housing, that, you know, amount of affordable housing that was supposed to be put in that never got to that. I'd also be interested, because again, one of my biggest priorities is the infrastructure piece, and I know that takes time, but across the county as a whole, you know, Crozet was designated a growth area, I think 50 years ago. So that kind of triggers proper planning to sustain growth. But where has Crozet, being a growth area, played across the different areas of the county, and where has certain capital improvement project money been designated to other areas in the county where maybe it should have been designated to Crozet over the past couple decades? I'm probably asking for a lot here, and I know the county staff is stretched thin, but these are just topics that I think educationally will help at least me, and I hope many others on the board and community members. Over.
I will just share with you that all of the capital improvement programs and the budgets and everything for a long, long way back to probably the 80s are all digitized and on the county website. And I think searchable by keyword too, which makes it even better to be able to see how those have been gone over the years. I think you would, and I will, when I will send to Allie and she can circulate it to everybody, what we discussed at the board meeting last week, or you all can listen to it if you'd like to, is a really good discussion about our funding for transportation projects going forward, talking about all of the things which are in budget right now, which is the 151 roundabout, the 240 roundabout, the bridge on Crozet Avenue, which I wish they would wait 5 years. The things that are coming, the other roundabouts, the possibly 3 roundabouts on 240. I mean, those are still in the 5 to 10 year frame because there's a lot of work to do. But because the county has now officially made application for revenue sharing, the pre-application meeting has already happened for the Lick and Hole Bridge. So it's only been 30 years, but we are that much closer, and having spent now $500,000 working on this, that is like a vested, you're ready to keep moving forward as opposed to throwing it in the trash. So from the streetscape project, which was X million in the library and the stormwater wetland, I mean, there's a tremendous number of different projects that when representatives of other master plan areas get very jealous because they feel like their place hasn't gotten anything because we took it all. Now, we were the first, and we were first in line, and we were first with many, many citizens who had already spent 20 years pushing for that library. And then another 10 years after that, it finally got built. But there has been just so much legwork over generations, really, of citizens that have brought these things about. But now we have 7 master plan areas. And believe me, they all have problems. They're all different problems. And it all depends on, the geography and everything else. But Crozet is the only one which is remote from the urban ring, and so has a bit of a different description in every way and it's pointed out by the staff in the introduction in the master plan about how it has a different flavor and hopes to have a little more sustainability where people don't always have to go somewhere else to work, that we can be trying to work toward that work here plan. So that is information I can share. The latest information on Acme, I can share, dig that up. We get a report twice a year from the people who are doing it. And it's been 2 years away for the last 10, but I think we're down to 1 year now. So it is very, very much a super high priority, a light industrial site. It cannot be used for residential. That is the EPA rule. So that is a great benefit from my perspective because we don't ever have to have that rezoning for residential debate on there. And I've certainly sent many different business possibilities to go, please go talk to the Beam people and see where they are now, because sooner or later they're going to say yes to somebody. And we have a lot of good employers and people who want to grow out here, and we can't let them get away. Let's see. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was a very rambling answer, but there are certainly many things that we have achieved, but we have many, many more because of the 7,000 people who are already here, added to the 2,000 people who were here when I joined the board. So that is a lot of people, a lot of bicycles, a lot of cars, a lot of pedestrians, and They're all in one very small geographic confined space. And so we just have to keep plugging along. And this is the marathon, many marathons effort here. This is not ever over. So we just, I'd be interested to hear what you think after you get the information.
I think also, just to respond to your earlier idea about capital improvement sort of updates, we do traditionally do that at our meetings, and a little bit of it kind of happened during the master plan discussions. So I do think, like, pretty much once a year, Kevin from transportation and often sometimes are at the same meeting, our VDOT area, representative, or whatever their title is, that was Joel, but now Joel's been promoted, I think. But they both report on project statuses, but it actually hasn't been that long since we've had them. So I would assume we would probably give them a little more time and hear their, but yes, that's a normal usually annual CAC meeting topic where we get maps and timelines from Kevin and VDOT. But he did some of that when he presented the transportation chapter to us a few months ago. So I would probably put that off until spring or something. But it's always, the traffic circle at 240, 250. I mean, that's been like going out to bid in the next 6 months, like for a little while. So we'll give them a little time, and then we'll see if anything actually has gone out to bid. And COVID's unfortunately slowed all that down too.
Yeah.
Doug, I thought you were going to say something earlier. Did we get to you?
I can be pretty quick. I just had a couple of thoughts. The minutes are fine. Joe, I know that you've spoken in the past about tax service districts, and I think that's a topic that I'd like to see this group consider, because to Brian's point about infrastructure, it is a long time coming. And I think the only way to deal with some of these things is to pay for it yourself. We're the ones that are going to use this infrastructure. If the infrastructure just stays basically the way it is, I don't worry terribly much about the master plan, because life here will start to deteriorate in quality, and it won't be so attractive to move to Crozet. But where I did want to say is, Joe, where I'm looking forward to in the coming months is I'd like to focus on preserving the historic districts and the historic buildings that we might have in Crozet, something about the culture here that we can hang on to and continue to try to make Crozet a quirky, interesting town. So that's it. Thanks very much. I probably overspoke.
No, you're good. You're good. Thanks, Doug. Joe?
Yeah. Quickly, first thing, Mark's point about the master plan and the analysis, I think that's exactly the kind of thing that I had sort of envisioned that we could be taking on to alleviate staff, their needs, right? So I think that's the kind of thing where 2 or 3 or 4 people on this committee could break off and do a little legwork and look back at the 2010 master plan and make a spreadsheet and just say, how many of these projects were proposed, how many of them got completed, right? I mean, something like that, right? That seems doable for some subset of group on this people on the committee. So I think that's a great idea. I just think that's the kind of thing we could do ourselves, and then use that data, just like we did with the survey a few years ago, and use that data to help drive some changes. I totally agree, Doug. Thank you. You took the words out of my mouth. I'm always harping on service districts. Frankly, and I'm glad Ann brought it up. My family, it's fall break at the university, at the law school. We were in Fairfax and Arlington this weekend, and we took our son to playgrounds, and we were amazed. My wife kept saying, these are the most amazing parks and playgrounds we've ever seen, because they pay for them. The bottom line is they're willing to pay for it. They tax themselves, and they have amazing amenities. I mean, flat out, because they've chosen to pay for them. Nobody likes to pay a lot, but if we want a lot, we need to pay a lot. So I think, tax rates are an important thing. And Anne brings up a good point that there are people around our community that live in more rural areas, or people that have trouble perhaps bearing a higher burden. One of the benefits that I see about taxing districts or improvement districts is you get to draw the boundaries. You get to draw the boundaries as who get taxed and who doesn't. So those people who live way out in Whitehall, out in the country, and never use the sidewalks and never use some of these more urban amenities that those of us closer in downtown might be using, we could draw those boundaries. And I don't see, at least on the face of the law, I'm not a lawyer here, but I don't see anything that really restricts the ability of people to carve out whatever areas they want. So yeah, I'd like to see that. I think it ties in with the broader CIP discussion, because I think there's, as we've noticed, there's two distinct things, right? One is how big is the pot of money that you get to use? And then two is where does it go? And I think we've sort of tended to focus on the second, which is how much are you divvying up and which projects get funded and how many of them are at Pantops and how many are in Crozet? And we're kind of missing the front end discussion, which is, how much of that money is going in the first place? How big, for example, is the capital budget compared to the overall budget? How much are we putting there compared to other things? And so I think that's an important thing, the broader funding discussion, service districts, tax rates, CIP budget as a broader part of the county's budget. So I think that the funding aspect is a meeting and an important one. And the last thing I just point out is maybe, and this is kind of maybe back of the line, we don't really have to worry about as much, but kind of a future, like a longer term. I know the master plan is a 10-year document, right? But I'm always amazed when we have these meetings and the folks from the water district, the water service authority come in, right? And they're saying 75 years from now, here's our water usage. And they know how much water is going to be in Beaver Creek Reservoir in 60 years. And so I'm wondering, is there a role for us to think sort of longer term? Again, I'm looking at something like climate change, like a long-term trend for someone, you see these occasionally you'll see articles online about migration patterns, right? Where are people going to be moving? What is going to happen when Virginia Beach, gets inundated or whatever? Where are those people going? It might be interesting to get some data from some of the folks that advise, for example, the county's climate plan, or people that think about those long-term trends. Again, 30, 40, 50 years out. What are some of the longer term things that they're not things we're going to be doing today or tomorrow, but just things that are on the radar that we're going to be looking at decades down the road. This might be a place just to have a little bit of that conversation.
We do have a new climate change director, Gabe Daly, and I am so thrilled that finally, after many, many years of looking the other way, the county is actually seriously investing. We have adopted a plan. It has a lot more muscle that's needed for it, but some very important strategic initiatives are already underway. But something the discussion of that sort in the CCAC meeting would be a way for more people to understand that there are little things that every single one of us can do that will make a huge difference. And when we do that, then there's less of a being overtaken by the inertia of the massivity of the monstrosity of the problem. So that's a grand idea.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that's like the climate. I think that's a great topic, right? We've got a new climate person. We have a climate action plan. And I think that's a great place where we could bring in some of those groups or people and invite, ahead of time, really think through it and say, let's bring in the homeowners associations or whatever, and bring in certain businesses and really have not just sort of informational, like, let's talk about what's master plan, but like, hey, here's 4 or 5 steps that all of you on your HOAs need to do, or here's 4 or 5 things that you at the business can do, installing, motion sensing lights or whatever. Like, let's really think about what are 5 or 6 things we can do to help implement this plan as people. So that's it.
Right.
Sean?
Sort of building off of what Joe and Doug were saying, I think it would be instructive to try to identify some districts in Virginia or maybe even elsewhere, but places that have grown very rapidly, very quickly. I think we're going through a pretty unique phenomenon of basically tripling in size in a decade. And what have other municipalities done in such situations to rapidly ramp up infrastructure? And what have other communities experienced with service districts, and how has that worked? I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think other communities have gone through this, and it may be comforting to hear that there are ways out of this predicament, and maybe some strategies that have worked and some that failed. And I don't know if that would be up to staff or us to sort of do the homework to see what other places. Maybe it is Fairfax, although that's a much larger area. But to use some examples from around the state, I think it would be fun to invite someone from a different part of the state to talk about their experience and what's worked and what hasn't.
The members of the High Growth Coalition would be great people to pounce on, and we'll also include a link to that. Okay.
Cool. Costas?
Yeah, Joe brought something up that was interesting, and I don't know. Also, the option of sort of a credit to a community that funds something on its own. And I don't know how that would work, but is that something that's even thought about? Let's say, Old Trail wanted to develop the park, and they pay for the county to give them a credit for doing so, as opposed to taxing. It would sort of be the reverse opposite. If groups like homeowners associations came together to make some improvements, is there a way to recognize that and give them a credit for it? So just a thought.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm happy that we've had a meeting where everybody's spoken. Well, sort of to try to direct this into a short-term plan here. Next meeting, we have a couple, Rachel, what do you think is feasible staff-wise as far as, or what does the group think is most useful for our November meeting? Also, maybe we want to discuss whether we want to meet in December, or if we want to, sometimes there is no meeting in December. That's a thought. But what do you guys want to talk about next month? And is it a community engagement master plan debrief? How did it go? How does the CAC want to improve or carry on with our engagement? Or do we want to do that and sort of get the a more small group discussion about the equity information that was presented at the joint CAC. Beyond that, we have the discussion about the tax districts and CIP funding. If that sounds like one meeting.
Allie, I think your first inclination was the right one, was the master plan debrief and the kind of the feedback process, because that's going to inform all these things going forward about getting feedback and engaging with the community. It seems like all the ideas we brought up tonight, which are really good, but they're all going to depend on having effective engagement and kind of implementing those ideas that might come out of that, and kind of, or they're going to be better, right? If we can get that part right and improve on it, and do as well as we can. So that seems like a logical place to start. And maybe the equity, to the extent we have time, like maybe both of those, because obviously, and a lot of things we're gonna talk about too are gonna impact equity or have equity components to them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had another topic, which, and Rachel had already spoken to them about economic development.
Oh,
And that, and like hearing from the economic development office, like what, I don't remember whose idea this was or request it was in the beginning, but just to hear from them about, what kind of businesses, or just what the community can do to support economic development in our area, right? Rachel, hadn't you spoken to them about even November?
That's correct. I think maybe I was asking them about the October meeting and it didn't work for their schedule, or they just weren't able to make that work. So they said they could possibly come for November. I can confirm that this week if that's of interest to the group, or I could tell them that you all would rather have them come a different month.
Yeah, and I think the equity meeting, I feel like might take a little more time. I mean, especially if we're gonna have her come and actually like lead her group discussion. So I would hate to try to squeeze that in. We might wanna, so I kind of want to hear what you guys think. Should we just do the master plan debrief community engagement topic as one meeting, or should we try to do economic development too next month?
my gut reaction is to do one topic at a time, only because then when things are really rolling, you hate to give somebody the hook. You say, okay, you have to stop now. So I'd rather have a shorter meeting and really get somewhere if we can. That's all.
I agree. So I guess I'm thinking we do that the debrief next month, and maybe if we want to meet in December, we can see based on staff availability, maybe either do the economic development meeting or the equity meeting.
Yep.
Okay, and then maybe in the new year, we'll have a better idea of, Joe's idea about the implementation projects. Maybe some more ideas will come out of our discussion next month about new year topics or priorities.
So I have a question about the debrief, and you and Rachel may have already squared it away, in which case that's fine. But is this amongst CCA people or CCAC folks, or is it with the county staff too? How so that they can plan?
Yeah, we have not worked that out.
Okay.
Joe, what do you think? Do we want to make sure that, I mean, is Rachel or one of her colleagues on the hook to, listen or to share anything?
I mean, I think it's. I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder because it wasn't my idea. My sense would be that it would be more of an opportunity for us to share our views, right? And then maybe, to the extent that Rachel or Michaela or anyone else is able to attend, it might be helpful just to have the staff perspective on sort of how much of this is feasible or how to implement, say, because people are going around saying, I know people are going to say, oh, have 4 pop-ups a week, right? That's like, whoa, hey, come on, let's pump the brakes a little. Maybe it'd just be helpful. I don't think, like a formal presentation or anything. I think it's more kind of an informal discussion and sharing ideas and kind of what worked, and maybe trying to come to some, best practices or ideas, kind of ideas for improvement about what the community sees, and then also what staff thinks is feasible or what's advantageous from their point of view.
Yeah, sorry to
I don't want to put anything on Rachel and Michaela and all those to like come up with anything, to have anything to present. I don't think we don't need a PowerPoint. It's just a conversation, I think, really.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot. It was, I guess, mainly Matthew's idea. And I think that was his intention, that it really be a discussion amongst ourselves. But I would hope that we would be able to get real-time staff reactions so that we're not just like spinning away with crazy talk. Costas, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Well, that sounds good. And I know, I mean, this is kind of a passion of Matthew's professionally. So I think he'll have more to contribute. So we'll plan on that
Hey.
for November.
Allie, I'm sorry. One thing I did think about it, I think whatever we do, I think we should assure Rachel and staff that it's a safe meeting. Because I think I could certainly see it deteriorating or having someone take a shot at something that's happened and it's not something we're going to change. So I would say there should be some ground rules that make it a safe meeting.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. For sure. Yeah, we don't want it just to be yeah, hopefully it's more of the constructive rather than
Well,
shot
and
fired.
ideally, right? I think Matt's plan was it's process, right? It's not about the substance of it. It's the process of feedback and that, right? It's kind of what worked, what was more or less effective in terms of getting the engagement, regardless of what the outcome was, right? Or what the substance of that feedback was.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to debate, middle densities applications in certain lots or anything, but I do think that it's a important, especially looking back. I mean, and I would encourage you guys to kind of refresh your memory, maybe about how things went, especially with the bigger public. What do you call it? Whatever, work sessions. Sorry, work sessions. That happened, and just what happened when we did have that rather tense meeting with planning commission, and just how we might improve.
So Joe, I think it's a good point. One of the things I was thinking about is I know there was a lot of discussion about input and the pop-ups and some things like that, which are certainly going to come up as process, but there was a little bit of passion about the fact that they maybe weren't representative. And so that's one of those topics where I think we just need to be really careful and make sure that we say in an objective way, i.e. we would like to see more of these during these hours, as opposed to being critical of what may have happened in the past. That was kind of what I was referencing, because that process things I think folks had something to say about. And I think Rachel and her group took a little bit of heat about it.
Cool. Okay, any closing thoughts? All right, any announcements? Let me find my script.
Can we remind real quick, maybe Ann, when is the master plan final approval possibly meeting?
A week from tonight, it is on the agenda. So each of you, please write a passionate and polite affirmation of your views about the master plan and how much you love your community, and your grandkids want to live there. So that will be helpful.
And have a sidewalk and a desk at school, right?
Well, we are drowning in our own success. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And the
so
recession in
yes,
2010
it is
not much either. So
it is time for us to write and get those emails in before it's too late for them to be read. And yeah, next 1 week from tonight.
All right. Well, there was a
That's
publication or something that said we're the second largest, fastest growing area in the state of Virginia. I don't know if somebody saw that. Apparently that's what came out. The 29 corridor in Albemarle County is the second fastest growing area.
Huh.
the 29 corridor. Oh, okay. Not
Well,
Crozet
29
specific.
in Albemarle County, that
Right.
area.
Okay.
And Albemarle County.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it. Unless we have any other thoughts. So our next, the next Crozet CAC meeting is tentatively scheduled for November 10th at 7 p.m. It says, or another date. Is that true, Rachel?
I just put that if you, because you all were discussing your November and December meeting dates. so
Okay.
It
But
sounds like you're having both.
I
so.
think well, November 10th sounds fine. That's not too close to the holiday. So, sorry. So November 10th, 7 p.m. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. If anybody is listening, I'm sure you all already get my emails, but I do send out emails, and you can always let me know if you are not getting notices or having any trouble finding the agenda on the county calendar. Thanks, everybody. Good night. See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Rachel.
Bye.
Thanks for taking notes, Ann.